So we've had another mass shooting in America. It feels like I say that way, way too often because, well, it happens way, way too often. Now this time it happened in California. This was a country music bar that was filled with college students. Um, now, 12 people were killed, including a police officer, according to authorities. Now, the gunman, who apparently committed suicide, stepped into the Borderline Bar and Grill around 11:20 p.m. on Wednesday and began shooting at the patrons. Witnesses said one bar patron, Taylor Whitler, was talking to Fox News, and he said, quote, "He had perfect form. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He had practiced." Now that, of course, we find out later that this man was part of the military. He's a former Marine Corps officer, so of course he knew what he was doing. He was well trained. He was well trained by the government, and had access, of course, to firearms. Now, Ventura County Sheriff Jeff Dean told a news conference that the suspect had been identified as Ian David Long, a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. And of course, Dean said the authorities so far right now have no indication of a motive or any connection to terrorism. He said that the victims right now were apparently targeted at random. So this guy apparently is from as far as we know, wasn't like outspoken in any political way. Now, look, we're going to go through social media as usual, and they're going to find out, they're going to try to piece everything together. So there's a lot that we don't know about Mr. Long. Okay. We do know he wasn't a Muslim. He wasn't a black guy. He was another white guy who had a legal gun. So now there was something illegal about that gun, and that was his magazine size. Apparently, he had an extended mag. So, which of course that allowed him to shoot, to kill more people between having to reload magazines. So that of course is not legal, and somehow he was still able to get access to that. Now, as for Long himself, Dean said that his department did have several contacts with Long over the years for some minor incidents, including a traffic collision, okay, and in 2015 when he was beaten up at a local bar. And in April earlier this year, deputies were called to his house for a disturbance and found him acting irrationally. I'm not quite sure what that means, but they are saying that he might have been suffering from PTSD from the fact that he was a veteran that had been in the Corps. Now, of course, we don't give our soldiers the kind of mental health care that they need and that they deserve. So, and look, we don't give Americans, everybody else, the kind of health care and mental health care that we deserve as well. Maybe we ought to do something about that in case one of them becomes violent and actually does something like this. But again, I don't know his political affiliation. I don't know anything like that. So right now, you can't really call it an act of terrorism, but it certainly is terror. It certainly is a horrible situation. Okay. Nonetheless, right? Now, when he was suffering from PTSD, Dean said that they called our crisis intervention team. Our mental health specialist who met with him, talked to him, and cleared him. So, now, among those killed in the assault were a police officer. This was 50-year-old Ron Halis, who was married and had a grown son. That was one of the people that were dead. We don't have identities on some of the others, but around a dozen or so people were also injured among the dead. Now, let's see, get more information here. Man, from what I've been reading, it was a hectic escape for the people who did survive. In fact, there was one person quoted in this article. This is Matt Wennerstrom. Now, he's a 20-year-old college student who attended events at the bar. He said that shooter fired a short-barreled pistol that had a 10 to 15 round magazine. as I was mentioning earlier, it was an illegal extended magazine. He said that, look, when they started to reload, people, they got people out of the bar. Some smashed their way out through their windows using bar stools, breaking windows, going out into balconies. I mean, it was pandemonium. Okay. Now, there was a security guard. He was also shot outside, and there were security guards inside that I believe were also armed that were immediately the first one shot and killed. So much for having the good guy with the gun argument, right? Now, here's another thing that's not necessarily related, but sort of related. Last year, you guys remember, there was a country music festival in Las Vegas that was the scene of the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. That was the Las Vegas massacre that killed 58 people. Some of the people that were in this bar during this shooting survived that Las Vegas massacre. Isn't that amazing? Only in America can you go to 2 different events and get shot at within the span of a year. Survive 2 different mass shootings in 2 different places because you happen to be there, right? It just, there minding your own business, listening to music, and then another mass shooter. I mean, that's insanity. Here we have a country where where that can happen to you. Because mass shootings are so prevalent here in America. Does it seem like we've got a gun problem yet? Seems like it to me. And again, here we have, again, not a Muslim, not a Mexican from the caravan or anything like that. No, we have another apparently disturbed white guy. There seems to be a pattern here. And we need to do something about it. Whether it is, increased mental health care, which I've always been in favor of. And if you're actually in favor of, then why don't we actually do something about it? And increase mental health care and pass Medicare for all. Do something like that. But instead, their priorities, the people on the right who say, no, let's talk about mental health care and not talk about guns. There was somebody, NRA spokesperson. No, not an NRA spokesperson. I'm sorry. This is a Marsha Blackburn who recently won their election. She said the first thing when she was told about this, said, we need to protect the Second Amendment. That's what those people, that's their first concern. We got to protect the Second Amendment. We're not going to protect the people that are being negatively impacted by some people taking that amendment too far. Not going to protect those people. We're not going to protect them at all. We're going to worry about protecting the guns. And more importantly, I think to them is protecting their profits, protecting the gun manufacturers, because people like Blackburn receive tons of money from the NRA, who is, of course, funded by the gun lobby, by the gun manufacturers. We have a huge problem in this country, and a lot of it comes down to money and politics. So until we get a handle of that, we're going to see a lot more Thousand Oaks, Las Vegas massacres. This is the 5th mass shooting by a white guy within, the last 2 weeks? So it's obvious that there is a large problem, and unfortunately, we will again do nothing about it. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on, and you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.